We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Excuse me while the host clears his throat. That's a wonderful way to start the show, isn't it? Good morning. This is Robert Phoenix, and you are listening to the Friday FARcast. Welcome. It is Friday the 19th of October. We are almost out of the sign of Libra, getting ready to shift into Scorpio here. It'll happen on Tuesday or Monday, depending on what part of the world you're living in. So welcome to today's show. And today's show is going to be a fairly interesting theme. We're going to be looking at a series of, I guess we would call them atmospheric phenomena with the fireball experience happening all across the country, and three in particular that happened in fairly close succession over this past week. And I'm going to be speaking with James Burns and Richard Son over the course of the program. And the reason why I spoke to both of them, I spoke to James 2 days ago. James, of course, is the curator of freedomfiles.us, and he has been a radio host and continues to put his programming up on YouTube in the form of podcasts. And James is a patriot in the truest sense of the word, smart guy. And I talked with him because he's down in Shreveport, Louisiana, which is where one of these booms and one of these flashes of light across the sky took place. So who better to ask than James to get some information? And Richard, who is a friend of the show, he's been on before as an electronic musician. Richard is also an amateur stargazer. He's an astronomer, so he has a lot of interest in what goes on up there. He took a lot of footage of the last eclipse when he was up in Mount Shasta. And he was on the freeway not far from where I live, and he saw the fireball in California streak across the sky. Well, there's a third one that took place on the 17th, 2 days ago, over Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. So these are three events with these three fireball or comet-like phenomena that have been bombarding our reality here over the last week. What does it all mean? Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the meaning of this and what is possibly the meaning of this. I think to understand the impact of a comet or a fireball on the collective portion of our populace, i.e. on our psyches, we need to go back into time, and we need to revisit how other cultures viewed comets and viewed fireballs, what they meant. It's not good. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, classically, these are ill omens and bad signs of what's to come. So if we were living in an ancient culture, which sometimes I think we are, we just don't really quite understand it. Everything around us seems to speak of technology and advancement and progress, but I'm not sure we're all that advanced at times. Anyway, if we were living in an ancient culture, what would have happened over the course of the last week would have been very troubling, to say the least. This is from Deep Impact and umd.edu. This is something NASA put together. I'm going to read this to you. It says here, ancient cultures also played a hand in inspiring a terrible dread of these celestial nomads. The Roman prophecies, the Sibylline oracles, spoke of a great conflagration from the sky falling to earth, while the most ancient known mythology, the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, described fire, brimstone, and flood with the arrival of a comet. Rabbi Moses ben Nachman, a Jew living in Spain, wrote of God taking 2 stars from Kima and throwing them at the earth in order to begin the Great Flood. Yakut legend in ancient Mongolia called comets the daughter of the devil and warned of destruction, storm, and frost whenever she approaches the earth. Stories associating comets with such terrible imagery are at the base of so many cultures on Earth and fuel a dread that followed comet sightings throughout history. Comets' influence on cultures is not limited simply to tales of myth and legend, though. Comets throughout history have been blamed for some of history's darkest times. In Switzerland, Halley's Comet was blamed for earthquakes, illnesses, red rain, and even the births of 2-headed animals. The Romans recorded that a fiery comet marked the assassination of Julius Caesar, and another was blamed for the extreme bloodshed during the battle between Pompey and Caesar in England. Halley's Comet was blamed for bringing the Black Death. The Incas in South America even record a comet having foreshadowed Francisco Pizarro's arrival just days before he brutally conquered them. Comets and disaster became so intertwined that Pope Calixtus III even excommunicated Halley's Comet as an instrument of the devil. And a meteorite from a comet became enshrined as one of the most venerated objects in all of Islam. That's right. There is a piece of a comet inside the hyperdimensional cube in Mecca, the Kaaba. It's in there. Were it not for a Chinese affinity for meticulous record keeping, a true understanding of comets may never have been reached. Unlike their Western counterparts, Chinese astronomers kept extensive records on the appearances, paths, and disappearances of hundreds of comets. Extensive comet atlases have been found dating back to the Han Dynasty, which describe comets as long-tailed pheasant stars or broom stars and associate the different cometry forms with different disasters, although the Chinese also regarded comets as vile stars. Their extensive records allowed later astronomers to determine the true nature of comets. Although most human beings no longer cringe at the sight of a comet, they still inspire fear everywhere around the globe. From Hollywood to doomsday cults, the United States even set up the Near-Earth Asteroid Tracking (NEAT) program, specifically to guard us from these divine dangers. However, although they were once regarded as omens of disaster and messengers of the gods, today a scientific approach, thank God for science, has helped allay such concerns. It is science and reason that has led the fight against this fear since the days of the ancients. It is science and reason that has emboldened the human spirit enough to venture out and journey to a comet, to stare it right in the third eye, and point his finger at that comet and say, "I'm not afraid of you, Jack. I got science on my side. Screw you and all your comet friends." Doesn't really say that. It is science and reason that will unlock the secrets that they hold. Can we all have a moment of silence for science and reason? Thank you. So what does science and reason have to say about the comets that we have been witnessing over the course of the last few days? Hard to say, because out of Minden in Louisiana, science and reason said one thing, and then something else said something else completely entirely different. So the science and reason I'm talking about, if you go into the show page, you'll see my link to James's latest story. And basically, you'll see a picture there of the damage that this thing did. It is surface damage. Now, there's a bunker there in Minden, and the bunker is supposed to house munitions. Okay, so this is what the official explanation was. The official explanation was an explosion went off in there. Okay, an explosion. Now, this explosion was felt in 3 different states. Keep that in mind. So unless we're talking like micro nukes, that would have had to have been one hell of an explosion, and perhaps really not the scientific and reasonable explanation for this. And the damage, if you go into the show page and click through that link, the last link, which has James's story, you'll see that the damage is very topical, that it literally burns across the floor of the forest and the woods there. It's very unusual. And, of course, the local reason for this was that the reason why you couldn't get out there was because there was fog and mist on the ground, which kept people from really going out to that site. Okay. Well, here in California, we had our own very interesting occurrence, and this was on, I believe it was on Monday, or I think it was Monday or Tuesday. Let's see. I think it was on Monday. And it was a spectacular night here. We had, it's over now, but we had a really nice run of Indian summer. Talking hot days, balmy nights, almost freakishly hot and bright and balmy. By the way, we have not had much chemtrail action here this fall, which is unusual because usually right around this time it is off the charts and looking like a chalkboard in the sky. But that has not been the case. Anyway, very beautiful crescent moon that night. The moon was in Scorpio, and over across the bay on the other side of the hills, I probably could have seen it if I had been up high enough. There was a fireball that went right across the sky, just like the fireball perhaps that was in Washington. And I'll read you that description after this one. So what happened was around 7:30 at night, and this is in a well-trafficked freeway. This fireball went shooting across the sky. And according to Richard, who saw it, and you'll hear more about it when I talk to him, there was another event, a flash of light that went up and down vertically versus the horizontal projection of the comet, or whatever this is, the fireball, whatever you want to call this thing. So we had two events. We had the vertical flash, and then we had the horizontal flash. I'll tell you this, over the past 3 days, I play a lot of baseball after school with my kid, and I've been seeing a fair amount of military gunship helicopters in the sky, which I have not seen for a while. And you know what they are. They're loud. They have a whoop, 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 whoop noise, and they're big. So they've been cruising around here. I'm not saying that the two events are connected. I'm just sharing with you that I'm sharing with you what I see. All right, so you'll find out more about the comet when I play the interview with Richard. And then, so finally, here's this story from the WashingtonPost.com, Capitol Weather Gang. says possible fireball seen over Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia Tuesday night around 7 p.m. Several witnesses report seeing a fireball sweep across the sky in Washington, D.C. region. I was walking to Alliance Francaise from the zoo metro stop around 7 p.m. last night, and I saw a white light in the sky zip past overhead and then go out with a small boom while still traversing the sky, emailed Victoria Hall. Capital Weather Gang reader Snow Lover 31 left the following comment on the blog. Saw a very large shooting star around 7:15 p.m. near Centerville High School. Looking northeast, not one of your average ones either. It was orangish red in color and lasted a bit more than your average blink of an eye shooting star, which is confirmed also by Richard when you hear the interview. On the American Meteor Society website, several reports were logged. Martha Widra of Glen Burnie, Maryland, says she saw an object that had a reddish fire-like ball with a yellow-orange tail. Keith Cross in Hughesville, Maryland, says it had almost exactly the look of a large firework, but moving incredibly fast and completely silent till it burnt out. Cross added it was the brightest object I've ever seen flying across the sky. A fireball is a meteor, sometimes referred to as a shooting star, that is larger and brighter than normal. The American Meteor Society says they occur every day all over parts of the Earth, but that most people will only witness one or two in their lifetime. Well, we've had 3 of them happen in the last week. So the odds of this occurring are pretty high. The meteor event last night has not been officially recognized as a fireball by the American Meteor Society, which first reviews reports before any classification. So there we go. Here's another sighting. There are additional sightings. So there's another sighting of this event. What does it mean? Let's break it down. Let's try to make some guesses here, some educated guesses. Because it would be one thing if it was simply one of these phenomena in the sky. To say, okay, it was a low-flying shooting star. But to have 3 of them in 1 week, and one of them, interestingly enough, at a military complex, is highly unusual. So let's start with the most plausible explanation, and then let's go out to the most fantastical one. Most plausible explanation is that we are entering the Orionids, which are a seasonal meteor shower, and it's supposed to peak on Saturday night. But we're well ahead of schedule. And if you have had the great pleasure to watch the Leonids or the Orionids or any of the ids with their meteor showers, it's really a pretty amazing sight. Just as a personal aside, one night I was living in La Honda, which is where the 60s started. That's where Ken Kesey lived. And Neil Young still lives there. Not a lot of ambient light. And I was with a bunch of people from this biker bar I used to go to. And we went out on this hillside, and we were all completely stoned on mushrooms, watching the Leonid meteor shower come out of the sky. I will never forget that night. It was absolutely like a Van Gogh painting dripping from the sky into my brain. It is one of the most psychedelic experiences I'll ever remember. Incredible. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, this Saturday you'll get to see the Orionid. So maybe these are just kind of early Orionid fragments. I don't think so, though, because I remember, as high on mushrooms as I was, when I saw those drifts falling from the sky, they were not extended. They did not cross the horizon. They fell, they shot, they melted. That was what they did. So even in the best of circumstances, at the height of something like that, it did not approach anything remotely resembling what's happened in 3 parts of the country. So maybe we can rule out the Orionid explanation. So what does that leave us with? If we rule that out, then what? Well, now we're staring down some really strange stuff. Because perhaps what we're dealing with here, I don't want to, send people into a panic, but perhaps what we're dealing with here is maybe the onset of an incoming object. Perhaps these are the pieces of that incoming object that is headed in our direction. And of course, most people would know that I'm talking about Nibiru, Planet X, aka Nemesis, which I don't do a lot of programming on. I just don't. That's not to say that I'm not interested in it. I was very interested in it about 2 years ago. In fact, I was obsessed with Nibiru about 2 years ago. But I've also seen what happens when people have predicted Nibiru. Now, is that to say that it's not here? Look, I've seen pictures on the web where you can find two suns in Antarctica. Why did the United States spend all this money to get their telescopes up in Antarctica? Why is there provisionary government set up in places like Canberra, Australia? Why do they have a major underground complex in Denver? Why has the White House built an entire White House beneath the current White House? Why have they built cities in places like Mongolia, which occupy no one? These are all questions that need to be answered in light of the Nibiru elephant in the room. Now, this could be that. This is exactly what these things could be. And we may as well be getting used to them, if that's the case. Here's the other scenario. The other scenario is that we might actually be involved in a space war right now. And maybe the Nibiru piece and the space war are linked. If you go back to Veterans Today a couple of weeks ago, there was Veterans Today is a pretty button-up publication. It gets out there a little bit on the conspiracy tip. Gordon Duff is, kind of like the, more of the X-Files version of Matt Drudge. But still, it's not a website. It's not before its news, okay? Veterans Today is not before its news. And yet they had a big story about a major fight between aliens in a Confederate Chinese-American force off the coast of San Francisco. And that was just a couple of weeks ago. And so when we get into that area, now we're looking at a lot of other scenarios. Is it real? Is it not real? Project Bluebeam? No. What's going on? Anyway, it's an interesting phenomena. It's one worth exploring and looking at and trying to understand right now. Because 3 of these in this country right around the same time is not a coincidence. I'm telling you that right now. It is not a coincidence. Especially one of them going across a military base in Louisiana. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's talk to some of the people that I interviewed, or let's bring them on and hear what they have to say. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring on I'm going to pot up my interview with James Burns, and we're going to get into the Minden piece and also a little bit about the sinkhole down in Assumption Parrish. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but mostly about the comet and what he was able to glean. All right, here's James Burns, broadcaster and the curator of the freedomfiles.us.
Okay.
All right, so today we're being joined by James Burns, who is the man behind the freedomfiles.us, and James has been out on the front lines
bringing awareness to the rapidly changing situation here in the United States and all around the world. James, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Robert.
So the reason why I wanted to get in touch with you and have a conversation with you is I was on Facebook. We're Facebook friends. And I saw that you had posted something on Facebook about this boom that had taken place near you in Shreveport, and had anybody else heard that? And then very quickly, other media outlets started to report on the same boom. And I was very eager to go right to the source, somebody who's been involved in uncovering truth, being so close to the epicenter of such a strange event. James, what's your take on what happened there, and how are people responding to it?
Well, Robert, it was interesting. It took place Monday evening, just before midnight Central Time here in northwest Louisiana. And I was just sitting here in my office, looking up articles, as I always am, trying to see, what was the best stuff to post on Tuesday's edition of freedomfiles.us. And all of a sudden, my house shook. I'm like, that was kind of weird. And so I walked around the house, made sure everything was okay. And I didn't really think much of it for about 5 or 10 minutes. And I started noticing on my Facebook page that several of my friends in the area had heard a boom and also had experienced their house shake as well. And I'm like, well, there's something to this. It wasn't just me, it was other people. So I started asking the question and going to other people's Facebook pages saying, hey, what's up? And it turned out, this thing was a lot bigger than what I realized initially. And then, of course, a whole bunch of stories started pouring out. At first, it was coming from Camp Minden. That's where most of the people in that area heard the boom. But it was felt as far away as the Texas border. And they were saying it was at Camp Minden at first, where they thought the explosion came from. Then a friend of mine said that one of the local police bands was reporting that it was actually the power plant in the city of Minden, which is not really a city, it's more of a town, but they have a power plant over there, a steam power plant. They said that it was the one that exploded. Then, of course, the reports came out about this object streaking through the sky, possibly a meteorite. And then the Webster Parish Sheriff's Department kind of confirmed that they were looking for a meteorite. But then about fast forward to 7-8 hours later, sometime in the morning on Tuesday, then they started coming out with the official story that it was this bunker that blew up.
Interesting. So you went from the initial news flash, which was Camp Minden, and then you went through about 3 to 4 iterations, and then circling back to the bunker, which would be Camp Minden or Fort Minden. A lot of times, James, I know that you're a news hound. A lot of times when the story breaks, it's really the first, 10, 15 minutes, half an hour, where we get the raw, unadulterated details, and then the editorializing takes place, and then stories and narratives begin to shift. So it's interesting that was actually the initial report, and then it circles back around to it being the same report. What's your take on it? Where do you weigh in on this?
Well, at the time, Robert, there was a lot of people were circulating their theories, and some people were speculating that it might have been a nuke that gone off. But as I mentioned, kind of comically, that if it was a nuke, I think I'd be ashes right now. Responding on Facebook. So I don't think it was a nuclear device. At least I hope not. But if it was this, let's just say that they're telling us the truth. We'll put aside any doubt at the moment. And let's just say it was this explosion from a bunker with, ordnance. My question is, how much ordnance was in there to cause such an explosion that was felt all over northwest Louisiana and all the way to Texas? And another question that I want to bring up is, what exactly was in that bunker? Because there might have not been a nuke in there, but there could have been DU weapons.
Right. And I'd heard also that there was a fairly big mushroom cloud that was visible. Did you hear anything about that?
I haven't. From the local witnesses, I heard about a streak. I heard about a fire. I heard about ash. I heard about this. Some people say they saw a glow, kind of an orange glow. Some people even said it might have been a green glow, maybe a little bit of both. But I have yet to confirm any story from a witness that there was a mushroom cloud. Of course, bear in mind that this was at about nearly midnight here in northwest Louisiana. So if there was a mushroom cloud, it probably wouldn't have been that visible. But I don't think there was one. But I could be wrong.
Right. Well, so What goes on at Camp Minden? I know these different bases and forts have different functions that they provide. Some provide.
Camp Minden is under the Louisiana National Guard, and for the most part, I think it's just basically a training base where they keep some guards there. I think they also have a number of bunkers where they have an ammo depot. And so it could be plausible that that's what happened, but it just seems kind of interesting that they took 7 to 8 hours to finally confirm that. And then, of course, I sent you an article from KTBS.com, this update, and, of course, Louisiana State Police are saying that the reason why they couldn't go and confirm this explosion was due to fog and moisture on the ground. I mean,
yeah, what's that all about?
I know. I mean, really. I mean, if, for example, there was a house on fire and the firefighters showed up and it was foggy and there was moisture on the ground, do you think they'd be like, oh, we can't do our job. We have to wait till morning whenever, the moisture goes away and the fog's gone. That's not the way it works. Right.
Or perhaps there was something in the fog and the moisture that they didn't want to subject themselves to. That's the other possibility. So something happened. It was significant. Went all the way to the Texas border. I've heard some rumblings, but you got to take this stuff with a grain of salt, about troop movements in the area. Have you heard anything about that?
To be honest, Robert, I didn't hear anything. It wouldn't surprise me if that took place at Camp Minden, where this incident allegedly occurred. But then again, we have to go back to where, we had several, I think they were saying hundreds of eyewitnesses shortly before this explosion happened. They saw something in the sky. They saw something whizzing by, possibly a meteorite, or as I posted in one of my articles, a UFO. And UFO doesn't necessarily mean a space ship.
Right.
That's unidentified flying object. That means that we have no idea what it is until it's confirmed.
Yeah. And there have been an uptick on these fireballs and meteors, shooting across the sky and falling to Earth recently, which is interesting. Okay, let's shift here from the boom to the suck and the sinkhole down in Assumption Parrish. What the hell is going on down there?
Well, this is something that hasn't gotten too much national attention, a little bit, but not as much as it deserves. And it's taking place down South Louisiana, which I would say is about 5-6 miles away from here, an hour south of the capital, which is Baton Rouge. In this small town called Bayou Corn, Louisiana, in Assumption Parrish. Now, Louisiana, unlike most of the rest of the states, have parishes, not counties. And this started happening, a couple months ago, and this black hole sinkhole. Well, some people might say it's turning into a black hole eventually if it keeps getting bigger.
Right.
But this sinkhole started forming out on this property owned by this company called Texas Brine, and it's continuing to get bigger and bigger. It's not stopping. And it's just very interesting because usually most sinkholes, they just happen and then they're over and done with. But this one just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. And apparently you sent me a TV report, and apparently the sides of the sinkhole have begun to collapse. And so therefore, in order to kind of stabilize, it widens itself and becomes bigger. And what's to say that this is not going to stop as a process? Is there any plan to deal with this, or how do you deal with it?
Well, that's a good question, because allegedly this company, Texas Brine, is supposed to be handling it, but they're not doing a very good job. One of the roads they built collapsed, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And that article I sent you was from a TV station out of Baton Rouge. If any of you want to go check it out, it's WAFB.com. That is WAFB.com. And at the very beginning, I know that there was, at least 150 people that were evacuated out of the area. Now, I don't know if they got to return home or not, but this is a major concern that definitely deserves way more attention, but it's not getting it.
Right. So there are some people that think that this is the potential big New Madrid event. This is the trigger that could alter the fault line there and change the water table. What are you hearing along these lines, James?
Well, a lot of people have theories out there. You got a lot of people on YouTube that follow this in a lot more detail than I do, like Dutch Sense and others. And it's very concerning. The fact that this sinkhole continues to grow, it's not stopping. It's getting bigger and bigger. And we're not too far away from the New Madrid fault line. It's up just a few hundred miles north of Louisiana. And, of course, you have the Mississippi River flowing down, and that's right there, basically, not too far away from Assumption Parrish. It's, it borders Baton Rouge, like I mentioned, which is an hour north of where this sinkhole is developing. So it's very possible that this is just one more example of some pretty bad stuff heading our way.
Well, there's also what's coming up through the water, and they've got methane that's coming up through the water, and I think they have some crude that's coming up through the water as well, which means likely that they've cracked or tapped some kind of vein there. Is that being talked about?
Vaguely, very, very vaguely. If you notice in that local article, they didn't really go into too much detail about that, which doesn't really surprise me. I'm surprised that we got this much information from local news. But it's interesting that, shortly, a couple of years ago, and this is something I followed extensively on my radio show back when I was on American Freedom Radio, the BP Gulf oil disaster with what happened out there in the Gulf of Mexico. And we're still dealing with the ramifications of that, the fact that the entire area was flooded with oil and methane gas, as well as the, millions of gallons of corrects that they dumped into the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
And it's just this big, giant cesspool, and it's not exactly good for the entire area or the entire environment. So I don't know if it's connected to what happened a few years prior, but it does seem very, very fishy.
Yeah. Are they still spraying core exit down there?
Supposedly, they were ordered to stop. Supposedly. But even if they did stop, they still dumped, millions of gallons of that stuff into the ocean.
Yeah, I know.
And
yeah.
by now, it's probably gone across the world. I mean, the most damage that it's done is obviously in the Gulf of Mexico. Of course, you had a lot of people getting sick along the Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
What was it? The Blue Plague, I believe it was called.
Yeah.
I had, Kendra, she was on my show a while back.
Yeah.
And she talked a lot about that. And that was another incident that was not being reported by the mainstream media. And it was so bad, you had BP basically running the show, calling the shots, and even the mainstream media wasn't allowed on the beaches to report on this.
Yeah, it was a crime, absolute crime against humanity. And what blew my mind, right, is you had those guys with the hay. They had the hay fix where they could just bring out bales of hay, and the hay would just normally soak up the oil. But of course, they had no interest in that. They wanted to bust out all that core exit and boost Nalco's stock price. And of course, we've got the loop current, and that loop current has gone all the way up through the Atlantic now. So you're right about that. Hey, well, real quick here, James, what's your take on Bobby Jindal? Is he trustworthy? He's a politician, obviously, but is he trustworthy? Does he have the back of the people down there, or what's his role in all this?
I would say that Governor Jindal is a typical neocon Republican.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he has some good qualities to him, just like almost everyone that you find. I don't consider him to be the devil incarnate, but at the same time, he's done some pretty shady things. I think he's done a better job than our previous governor, Governor Blanco. She was horrible, but, I mean, this guy hasn't been much better. And I will cite one example. You may have heard about this, Robert, but I think it was about a year ago. They made it basically almost illegal where you could get fined and possibly face some jail time if you were using cash to sell secondhand objects, items at, say, yard sales and garage sales. Now, for the life of me, I don't know why supposed Republican governor would support such a law. Why would you go in and tell people, even though this is your stuff, you no longer have the right to sell it on your property and get cash for it. You have to take checks. You have to take plastic. You have to have a record. And I think the big reason is two reasons. One is control, and B, they want to be able to tax it.
Sure. So he's gotten behind this, which is, theoretically kind of an anti-Republican, anti-free market position. But as we've seen with a lot of these guys, they're really not concerned with the free market. They're just concerned with their market.
Well, exactly. Most of these guys, and I can't speak for Jindal personally, but there seems to be a common trend when it comes to these Republican and Democrat suits. they're all sociopaths, psychopaths. They only care for number one. They don't give a damn for we the people. They're only out for themselves.
Yeah, they're them and their cronies for sure. You know what's really interesting about Jindal is that when I look at him, and again I'm here in California and I just get to see photos. The weird thing about Jindal is he looks like a Kennedy. He looks like a Hindi version of a Kennedy. Have you noticed that?
There's no need to be insulting to the Kennedys. No, I guess I'm more colorblind in that regard. I see most of the politicians as just walking, talking, empty suits, and whispering sweet nothings in your ear.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that, but anyways, I don't trust the guy, and especially since he came out endorsing Rick Perry, and then of course when Rick Perry dropped out, he quickly jumped on the Romney bandwagon, and I can't trust anything that this guy talks about, because how could you support a guy like Rick Perry or like Romney? Right.
No, it's pretty obvious. He's just going with who's going to butter his side of the bread, and that's unfortunately where politics is today. So anything else coming up for you, James? Anything else you want to share with people? Any gleaning insights or any hot news that you want to bust, or do you want to tell people about your show and where to find you?
Sure. You can find me online at freedomfiles.us, and from there I'm linked up to several social sites. I try and update articles every day, linking up articles. I do a couple of podcasts a week. Every now and then I throw up a web show. I've been doing it for over 3 years now. I really woke up to this whole thing back in 2007 when I became a Ron Paul supporter, and I'm just doing what I can, doing my part just like the rest of us are, to try and wake up people to what's going on and try and get out some real news and talk about important issues, unlike some of the other nonsense that they like to talk about. For example, was it the Honey Boo Boo? No, we don't talk about that at freedomfiles.us.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, I know who Honey Boo Boo is.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know. My IQ dropped about half a point once I watched one of the YouTube videos. Okay, well, James, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it, and keep up the good work. And hopefully you'll get some more information about what happened down there in your neck of the woods. And let's hope this sinkhole stops spreading, and we can stabilize that area as soon as possible.
I feel the same way, Robert. Hopefully they'll get it resolved, and I don't know, but hopefully they got some people down there that know what they're doing, will take care of it, but I guess time will tell.
Yeah, all right. James Burns, freedomfiles.us. Thanks again, James. We'll talk to you soon. All right, that was our friend James from the Freedom Files giving us a little bit of the lowdown on the ground down there in Louisiana regarding both the sinkhole and the comet. Boy, Louisiana, wow. Did they get nailed or what? Katrina, sinkhole, comet, Bounty Gate. It's got to be tough to be a resident of Louisiana. All right, so let's talk to you, or let's pot up the interview that I did with Richard Mystical Sun. This happened last night, and Richard and I are discussing what he saw personally firsthand with the comet flying right over his head. Now remember, Richard has been a guest on the show. He's a fantastic electronic musician and ambient composer. And let's listen to what he has to say. And we get into some other stuff here besides the comet itself. We get into some interesting territory about distractions and reality. So here we go. Here's me, Richard, from last night. And when I come back, we will talk a little bit about a few other things, then wrap the show up and send everybody off into a marvelous weekend. All right, here's Richard Mystical Sun on his comet sighting just a few nights back in the Bay Area. So we're talking here. It's late Thursday night, just trying to get some audio up for tomorrow's show, and talking with a good friend of the show and a supremely talented electronic composer and ambient musician, Richard Mystical Sun, who I've had on the show before. And Richard actually witnessed the fireball shooting across the sky yesterday. Richard, how's it going? And welcome to the show, and glad to have you back on here.
Hey, it's great talking to you, Robert, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good, and it seems like there is some really, for lack of a better term, strange and interesting stuff happening. Yesterday, I spoke with James Burns from Louisiana, and James lives just outside of Fort Minden, and we talked about the boom and the light in the sky there, and tried to kick around some possibilities and what I knew, or what he knew from being on the ground there. And here we are, just a day later, and something very similar has happened here in California, and a lot of people actually saw it, including yourself. Do you want to tell people exactly what you saw?
Sure. Okay, so first of all, let me qualify this. I grew up in Florida, and I have seen several launches of the Space Shuttle up close. I've been to Kennedy Space Center. Now, if you want to know what this thing is like in intensity, go to Google, look at a shuttle launch, and look at the flame coming out the bottom of that thing. Okay? That is the type of level we're talking about. We're not talking about a shooting star where you see a pin of light go across the sky and you make a wish. We're talking about a massive, meaty thing, very low in the atmosphere. Now, what's not being widely reported, let me backtrack here. So I'm driving on 680, I'm going north, and I'm listening to some podcasts on my iPhone, and I'm just,
You're listening to Robert Phoenix and Free Association Radio, no doubt.
Absolutely, there's no doubt. It's the most enlightening radio I could be listening to.
So, Richard, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your free association. Tell people where 680 is, because people listen to this from all over the world, and they don't really know where that is.
Okay, so 680 is in the East Bay of Northern California, and it's in the inside of the East Bay, so that would be east of San Francisco, and there's the bicoastal range, and it's on the inside of that range. So you don't really get a view of the bay. So it's very much an inland area.
Okay.
And so I was just driving down 680 North, and as you know, I'm an amateur astronomer, and I have a lot of interest in astronomy. So I always look at the sky, and I'm trying to figure out what stars are up, what planets are up, if I can see any constellations. Because when you're driving, you just want to, it's something to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm aware of the sky, and I like to just do that. And I'm driving north, and suddenly in front of me, I see this really, really bright light, solid white light, and it's going straight down, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And to the best of my judgment, you're going to have to get a map to look at this just for the people who don't know, but I would say it would be like in the Martinez area, Martinez, California. And right away, I'm thinking to myself, okay, now if that's a shooting star, why did it seem to go straight down? It was going vertically down. It seemed to hit the ground,
mm-hmm.
and it was bright. And I was like, well, that was far out. How could that be a shooting star? And I was processing that in my mind, because I was trying to think, okay, there's this Orionid meteor shower coming up, but that doesn't fit the model for that, because when you see a shooting star, you look up in the sky, and it fades out, but it's very much a distant type of thing. That's what I call a shooting star. It's like a star trail. This is something that looks like it's crashing down and hitting the Earth. And I can tell you that there's another person in Berkeley. I haven't been able to find him, but I heard that he was on the radio, and he was on his rooftop filming the sky. And he actually got some footage of this, the main comet, or meteor, whatever it is, because it's still unidentified. He's got some footage of that. He also is recording that he saw the first event, which I'm referring to now, this thing going straight down horizontally.
Right.
Vertically. So I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is that? And then out of my left-hand side, as I'm going north, my peripheral vision sees bright light, and it's starting to cast a shadow. And I look up, and it doesn't look very high to me from this perspective. So either it's very high and it's super huge, or it's really low. But there's a rumbling sound, and it is glowing. And when I say glowing, I refer you to the videos of a space shuttle launch. And that is what it looks like. It is a big, solid, chunky thing. There's nothing, star-like about this. This is like a giant object. I'm looking at this thing, and my first thought is, holy shit, this thing looks like it's going to hit the highway, and I'm going to be running into it.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping there are people who are seeing this, because I'm thinking to myself, there's no way anyone's going to believe me. I mean, this is the kind of thing that this is not the kind of thing you see every day. You don't see this. No one, maybe some people have seen meteors like this. I don't know. Everyone I talk to, hasn't seen anything.
I mean, this was a fireball. This is a classic fireball, right?
Oh, but it was huge. It had this very, very long tail.
Wow.
And it's glowing. It has multiple colors in it.
Yeah.
It's not just like orange or white.
Oh, interesting.
It's got many colors. And it's going horizontally. And it seems to be low and going horizontally. So here's my question is, first of all, number one, there's a sonic boom. Everyone in the area is reporting this. So first of all, obviously, this has been widely reported. It's well documented.
Right.
There's a sonic boom. I was talking to an airline pilot today who actually saw the same thing, and he said the only way you can get a sonic boom is you have to be lower in the atmosphere. So first off, that doesn't fit the meteor pattern because a meteor would burn up before it could get into the level of the atmosphere.
That's right. Absolutely.
Right. So number one, that thing was inside our atmosphere. It had already gotten through.
Yeah.
So normally when a meteor burns up, it's burning up as it's coming in. Like at the space shuttle's landing, it's going through our atmosphere, it's glowing, and the atmosphere is making it hot. And then once it's in, it cools down, and it lands.
Right.
This thing was inside our atmosphere, and it was burning up. And it was, if you could imagine like computer graphics and sort of the Christmas type, this very super clear, almost surreal look of computer graphics, and how that looked to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just
interesting.
Very difficult to see.
So this was obviously flying horizontally, paralleling the ground, right?
Yeah.
And just to give people an idea of what the weather was like here, it was spectacular, and it still is pretty spectacular. But it was, it was really, kind of a archetypal Indian summer night, and we had a crescent new moon in Scorpio. It was just hanging there in the sky. It was spectacular, and so the conditions. Some people might say, well, was it cloudy? Could it have been lightning? There was not a cloud in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
this thing is unbelievable. Believe me. It's a once in a lifetime type of thing. It's up there with the solar eclipse I saw back in May.
Yeah.
And the part that really puzzles me about it is the horizontal nature, and it was like perfectly horizontal. It was burning up.
Yeah.
It wasn't going down. It wasn't trending down, okay? It was burning up like it was going straight, okay? And then I saw it break up at the end. And there was like embers at the end, and then it was gone.
So, okay.
But it also seemed to come out of nowhere. I think I saw the entire event. It must have lasted like maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 seconds.
So was it going like north-south or east-west?
It was headed north from my viewpoint, driving 680 north. I looked off to my left-hand side, and it was going north.
Interesting.
Preceded by the vertical thing that was far ahead in Mosina.
So what time was this again?
I think it was about 7:45.
So this is towards the tail end of a pretty significant commute on that freeway.
Yeah.
So a number of people would have seen this then.
Oh, everyone's seen it. I was at a store in Berkeley tonight, and I asked the person there if they saw the firelight. He said, yeah, I saw it. He said he saw green colors. And what's very interesting is that there's been a lot of colors. And if you start looking on the net, I'm collecting pictures, but if you start looking at the net, there's a lot of colors in this thing. It's supernatural looking.
Interesting.
It's huge.
Well, okay, so now we've had one in Louisiana, another here, and there have been others reported. There was one, I believe, that was reported in London. In fact, there's been a jump in these fireballs recently, and so people are speculating. What does this mean? Are these fireballs are they the debris of an incoming object, or?
Well, let me clear up one thing right now.
Okay.
There is the Orionid meteor shower, and that is expected right now this weekend. Okay.
Right.
But according to we have, in the Bay Area, we have NASA, and we have the Moffett Field, they've already put out a statement that it wasn't from the Orionid meteor shower because Orion wasn't available on the other side of the planet at that time.
Right.
This is an outlier. There's no one who can say this is not part of that phenomenon.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah.
Now, you had told me in a email exchange on Facebook that they had reported that this had actually landed in Santa Rosa. Did you hear anything more about that?
No, I haven't been able to find out any more information, but some people are reporting, I've heard, that there's some kind of there's stuff on the land somewhere, and they're trying to find out that. And apparently Santa Rosa might be the location.
So that would have been going from south to north then, from where you were.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was moving fast too. So I mean, it could have had a lot of energy in it, and then the particles could have just scattered all over the place. I mean, I could see a very wide distribution for this.
Absolutely and utterly fascinating. Well, you and I had also discussed briefly this story about the Chinese and the Americans going at it off the coast of San Francisco with some ETs. And if people haven't seen this story, I'll post it on the show page. It was in Veterans Today, which rarely goes down the UFO rabbit hole. And there's this story about this firefight off the coast of San Francisco, Chinese and Americans taking on extraterrestrials. What was your feeling about that? What was your take on that?
Well, okay, so I'm on the fence about whatever, I believe there's life out in the universe, so I'm open-minded about the topic. What I can tell you is it would be incredibly stupid if there were people here or beings here from somewhere else and then we were trying to take them on. That wouldn't be a very good idea, I don't think, unless we have a super awesome technology that we don't know about. Because I don't think we have the ability to handle something like that. Honestly, I don't know what to think about that.
Well, here's what I think. I think that we possess weapons that we're not putting out there. They're not on the table, and whether or not that they could take on an extraterrestrial invasion remains to be seen. But certainly what it's feeling like now is that there's a pattern of these things taking place, and we're trying to understand what they are. Now, of course, one scenario is that these are just fireballs. Another scenario is that they could be something different, and if they are something different, then what are they? And if we're into the UFO thing now, the big question is it real, or is it us? Is this something that's being staged, or are we really throwing down right now because we're up against it here politically and socially and economically, and there are forces that are stepping in? I mean, what's your sense on all this?
It's an enigma. We don't know so much. We think we know a lot. We really don't know anything.
Yeah.
There's other phenomenon that could be at work too. There could be some type of solar event. Maybe that could be some sort of plasma discharge.
Could be. Yep.
It may not necessarily be a UFO or a comet, but it could be something else. What I can tell you is it was really amazing to see. I mean, this is the kind of thing that when you see it, you're going to remember it the rest of your life. And everyone I've talked to who has seen it, and a lot of people in the Bay Area have seen it, they're all still talking about it, because it's just really huge. I mean, even the fireworks displays, forget it. Okay? We can't put on a show that good.
Yeah.
Okay, that was something else. Entertain the idea of extraterrestrials for a minute. Hypothetically speaking, if extraterrestrials were visiting the Earth, I think we wouldn't be here by now if they were hostile. I mean, we've only recently started to develop advanced technology, and we're still here. I mean, we've been here back from the time we had, bear skins and stone knives. And so clearly, in the scale of the universe and the time frame, I don't see how that we'd still be here if there's hostiles out there. At the very same time, you never know. Someone new could come into the neighborhood. It's hard to say. All I can say is what I saw was probably the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the sky. Next to the solar eclipse, it's up there at the solar eclipse.
Right. Well, I think it's really interesting. It was on the heels of the debate, number one. It also happened in fact, both of these events happened just after Felix Baumgartner dropped from the sky and broke the sound barrier, right?
Right.
And somehow, this is what I find interesting about that event, that this guy dropped from 20,000, was it 20,000 feet? No, he's higher than that. How high was he? He was like 80,000 feet, or he was right at the edge of the planet. He dropped from the edge of the planet, and somehow he managed to land in Roswell, New Mexico. I mean, to me, that is mind-blowing.
That dude has got some courage, okay? That's all I can say. He is a extremely brave individual. I mean, obviously, we watch it and we sort of maybe think it's just spectacle or something, but he put it all on the line for that. That's unbelievable. Kudos to him for pulling that off.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, I find it utterly fascinating that from the edge of the Earth, like he's jumping from space, he's got the wherewithal to land in Roswell. I mean, it's really, to me,
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, how does this happen? How does this guy not get blown off course? And they were basically waiting for him there. I don't know. Is it all tied in together? I don't know, but certainly it's interesting. And we, just days after that, we've had an uptick in this activity. The pictures from Camp Minden are pretty interesting. I'm going to post the link on the show page, and you can.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but did you see that there was also something in the news, apparently in the Maryland, Virginia, and Washington D.C. area on the same night?
Yep, that's right. There's that as well. But what's fascinating about the Minden photo is that there's a train that it cut right through. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, whatever that was, it cut right through a train. And what are you
saying? Wait, because I'm not up on that story. What are you saying happened?
All right, so in Camp Minden, and then James, who I spoke with yesterday, he has more to share about this. But what happened was that a very similar thing took place, and people heard a boom, sonic boom, and then they saw a flash of light. Okay. Now, I don't know if some people said they saw a fireball. That's right. Some people, and so what happened was that Camp Minden apparently has some sort of munitions bunker, and they said that the munitions bunker exploded. But here's the deal: people heard this thing and felt this thing 3 states away. It was like an earthquake. So I don't, unless they have, micro nukes inside that bunker, I'm not sure if that's really the answer to what happened there. So some of the pictures that I did see, though, clearly there was something that took place on the surface, and it looks as though whatever it was cut right through a railroad car.
Was the car moving or
no, stationary? So,
well, I'm looking forward to hearing that interview tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, James, to the best of his ability, was able to garner information as quickly as possible, and he talked with the sheriffs there, and he lives there. He lives in Shreveport, not very far. So, here we have again this event that takes place, and it rocks people's worlds, and the explanation doesn't really hold a lot of water. So fascinating stuff, and I
Do I think we need to be concerned? I don't know. I don't think we necessarily need to be concerned, but we certainly need to, start putting some pieces together here because it's happening with a fair amount of frequency.
Actually, I disagree. I think we absolutely need to be concerned because why is it that something that big can hit our atmosphere and it's apparently not being tracked and we're not being told to look for it? Like, hey, everybody, look tonight at 7:45 p.m. There's an asteroid coming in, and it'll be quite a show.
Well, okay,
because, the dinosaurs aren't here, right?
Well, to your point, I would agree with you, but I'm just trying not to get people freaked out. Okay, I want to keep the I want to keep the the fear and terror at a minimum. So to your point, I would agree with you, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to start putting out there that we're at war with aliens. And that may very well be the case. That might actually be the case, but I don't. I'm not gonna go there right now. One of the things that's interesting, I don't know if you know about Freeman, but he talks about this whole torsion field technology, and essentially this is something.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, the government's been working on essentially, attracting asteroids to the planet and using asteroids as weapons, like bringing them in and then repelling them, and stuff like that, which to me is sort of like Starship Troopers. You remember Starship Troopers when the asteroid? Well, there's a scene in Starship Troopers where an asteroid is being used as a weapon by an alien species and comes in and completely obliterates Rio de Janeiro. So, yeah. Anyway, I mean, this is.
I don't even really think we need to go that far. I think that, once again, where's our priorities as a culture? Why don't we have active space monitoring right now for any objects that are coming in? We should have a defense against asteroids and meteors hitting the planet because we know that they've hit multiple times in the past, and we know that they've caused extinction events in the past. And yet here we are, 21st century, 2012, and something this big and massive can come into our atmosphere, whatever it is, and it's a surprise.
Well, apparently it's not just one of them either. I mean, that's really the thing. If it was an anomalous event, that would be one thing. But, we had two of these things happen within 48 hours of each other.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's news. And,
that definitely must be correlated.
Yeah. So, I think the best thing we can do is, wear a hard hat and stay alert. I don't know. This is going to be really interesting to see how this unfolds over the.
What I can tell you, it has. I mean, everyone. Hopefully, you can find some other people in the Bay Area to see it, to review it if possible.
Yeah.
Because really, it's a once in a lifetime type of thing to see. I can't stress it enough. When people are reading about this or hearing about this, they may be thinking too small.
Yeah.
You really have to go and look at the shuttle launch to try to get the idea of the energy and power of this thing.
That's amazing.
Okay, it was huge. I mean, when I think about it, just the sheer luck of even seeing it, to be on the road at the right time.
Right. I mean, I was around. I was in my house. So.
You felt it?
No, I was in my house. I'm jealous. I wanted to see it.
Well, the thing is, other than this one person I heard who saw the other one in Berkeley, he saw both events, the vertical crash near the Martinez Hills, and the horizontal one, which is the biggest one. I want to know about that vertical one, and I want to know how that correlates with the horizontal one, because, you've got two different things going on here. If it's the same event, okay, here's the thing, okay, let's walk back for a minute. Let's say there's an asteroid or a meteor or a comet, whatever you want to call it. It's coming in the atmosphere, it's coming in at an angle, right? So it's going to come in at an angle, it's going to skip off our atmosphere, it's going to pick up heat, it's going to pick up heat to the point where it's going to be maybe 3,000 degrees, 10,000 degrees, I'm not sure what it would be, it's going to be very hot.
Right.
It's going to be coming in at a slope, right? It's going to be going down, right? So it's going to be going forward and down.
Yeah.
So you've got two different anomalous things here. You have two outliers. You've got the one that I can attest to going straight vertically down. Okay, that's falling down. Okay, that's not coming down at an angle.
Right.
Or so that's going straight down. And then you have the other one that's going completely horizontal. So I don't understand the mechanics of that event, or either of the events. And I really want to understand.
Yeah, because they just don't really, they don't really show up in the way these things normally
present themselves. This is
right.
These are very different. I remember one night I was on a beach in Hawaii. On Kauai, it was a new moon night, and I could see all the stars, and I did see a shooting star go across the sky, but it was at a much higher altitude, and then it burned out. It was nothing like what you're talking about.
Right. I mean, if I could, what I could say is, like, if you had a rocket ship, okay, in the atmosphere exploding, it was like that, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So,
well,
thing ever, I thought I could say.
Well, all right, Richard. I'm glad. If somebody was going to see it, I'm glad it was you, because you have such a great eye for detail, and this is actually a field that you know a little bit about since you're an amateur astronomer. So is this going to inspire you to maybe make a little music about this fireball? What do you think?
Oh, probably it'll turn out somewhere, for sure. I mean, everything is inspiration to me, but this is definitely super inspirational. Hopefully it turns out to be something that is inspirational. But, I don't know if it's a sign of things to come. If there's more deep coming, who knows?
Right. Well,
I mean, the thing is, you don't normally hear about something like that over a major metropolitan area.
It's true. I think they had one recently in London. So,
Wow.
We're seeing, like I said, we're seeing more of these fireball events happening. And, I think we're going to, and I don't think it's going to stop. I think we're going to see more and more, and they're going to pick up in frequency. Fireballs generally are ill omens. This is, culturally going back into the annals of history, they are not looked upon. They're not well looked upon in terms of what they bring. So, just from a historical and sort of mythological perspective, the comet is not a happy symbol. But you know what? It's okay. We're here now, and there's not a lot we can do about it. So we'll roll with the punches.
What is it they say? May you live in interesting times.
And we are definitely in them now. There is no doubt that we are in interesting times now. And I was talking to a friend of mine. I know this isn't quite your field. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and we were talking about the Benghazi attack. And we were talking about how really what we're seeing with that is, people say, well, conspiracy theorists are nuts, or conspiracy theorists are paranoid. Well, what we're seeing right now is a very clear example of a conspiracy that is really fluttering on the edge of the mainstream media with what happened in Benghazi. And I don't think we've ever come anywhere close to something like this. I mean, here we have this event that took place. 4 people were killed based on an attack on the Libyan embassy. Immediately after that, the administration says that the cause for that attack was a video that had been made in Southern California and then aired on local TV, which is the video about that's the anti-Muslim video. So this is the narrative that comes out. Then afterwards, they backtrack and say, well, it wasn't the video. And then there's this whole other piece with they didn't have the information. They didn't have enough security. That they didn't know that this was coming. And yet it comes out that they did know it was coming. And you've got various factions inside the administration that are saying different things. Joe Biden talked about how, well, no, we weren't told anything, where in fact they were told something. And he contradicted himself on that debate, and it came out that Hillary Clinton had to fall on the sword and said that she knew. Well, if she knew, then why didn't she tell Obama? Why didn't she tell Biden? Why did she have the burden of this knowledge? So here we are. We're really on the cusp of a major conspiracy, and the mainstream media. Well, we'll see what happens with this, because it's not over yet. But certainly, to your point, these are very interesting times. I can't remember an administration that has been so close to something like this, with the exception of maybe the Nixon administration. I think that's where we are. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next few days. And by the way, Hillary Clinton is missing in action. They haven't seen her since she said that.
Here's what I would say about all that. I think that we're far too focused on the little fights that humans get into with each other, and we're missing the big picture. Whatever that is, and I'm not even following it, but I have heard that some good people were unfortunately killed in that event, and I think that's a really extraordinarily terrible thing that there's a loss of life. But humans have been killing each other since they've been walking around on two legs,
right?
And apparently they're going to continue to do that. The problem is we're not looking out enough. We're navel gazing. We're looking around at each other and what the other person is doing, what their beliefs are. Do I like their beliefs? Do I like their religion? Do I like their politics? Do I like what they think? And we're not looking out enough. We're sitting on a planet with an asteroid belt in a universe that's vast, and there's these things coming in from space. So the way I look at it is, whatever that is, I felt something nearly crash into the planet yesterday.
Yeah,
okay?
it's
That's
true.
Where I'm at, right?
Yeah. No, I hear you. So, it puts it all into perspective. So, and I am with you on that. All it takes are a few of these significant events, and all of a sudden everything else just becomes mice nuts. So, yeah.
I think politics is probably the worst invention of humanity.
I agree. And the only reason I brought it up, though, is because of the vulnerability of an event like that has never been so close to the mainstream media, so that the mainstream media would now have to at some point take on the role of the independent media or alternative media to report this thing as it is, which is a scandal and potentially a conspiracy. That's the only reason I brought it up, because it's not something that the mainstream has trafficked in since the Nixon administration. And
honestly, how much of the comment have you seen in the media or the media?
Well, certainly here locally, it's been big news locally for sure.
Wait, has it been on CNN?
No, of course not. No.
So is that a conspiracy?
I would say anything having to do with space is a conspiracy, absolutely, because I think there's a lot more about space that's been held back from us, and with, perhaps for our own good. I don't know. Frankly, I'd like to know the truth, but I think that it is a conspiracy, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I guess my point is, in my own sort of finite way of looking at this, is that this is, as an event, we're in a place politically with that event that we have not been since the Nixon administration, and the fact that we don't really have an alternative media representing any of this, the mainstream media is being forced to deal with it, and maybe they'll be forced to deal with other stuff like fireballs. Maybe this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Let's worst case this for a minute, okay? Worst case, somebody's doing something underhanded, okay? But let's worst case the fireball.
Right.
We haven't invested in enough technology to be monitoring what's going on in our own solar system so that we can actually protect and defend ourselves from incoming objects in space.
See, I'm not sure about that.
All right.
I'm not sure about that. I think we might. I'm of the mind that we've got technology that would flip our lids if we really understood what was going on. And for me, when I read Ben Rich's deathbed confession, Ben Rich was the guy who was the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, which was the most sophisticated R&D development wing of Lockheed, Martin Marietta. He said on his deathbed, "Hey, look, we not only have we been to the stars, we're there now. Not only do we have free energy, but it would take an act of God to shake it loose. I mean, he said this stuff on his deathbed. And then you have Gary McKinnon, who, God bless him, wasn't extradited, who'd been into the Department of Defense and cruising the flight logs or the ship logs, whatever they were, the craft logs for the Navy for a group of ships that don't even exist, with crews and the whole 9 yards. I mean, McKinnon is in there, and he's basically tapped into the fact that there is a fleet of starcraft that nobody fucking knows about. Okay, so I think we've got the stuff. I think we've got it. I think they're probably out there. Who knows? What they've done.
So
or what.
Here's my question for you then: how is it they can keep that secret, but every other secret they can't keep?
First of all, I don't think they can keep that secret. I think people have they've talked about it. Phil Schneider has talked about it. There are a lot of people that have tried to go public with this stuff. Stan Deyo has talked about it at great length, and Stan Deyo actually helped develop the anti-grav systems that they use on a lot of the craft that people think are UFOs. I just think that there has been a lockdown on this stuff since the 1950s. That's been an executive order. That's been a top-down decision. So I think they've been able to keep this stuff under wraps quite a bit. Now, are they going to, and part of it, Richard, is because if they don't, then what happens is that the social economy completely tilts on its side, and the control game is over. If they're using the technology to do what I think that they're doing, which is interstellar travel, multidimensional travel, then the game changes here completely. It's over. It's done. And
well, yes, history as we know it would end at that point.
Absolutely, and and this whole dog and pony show with the petrochemical dollar and oil and everything else just goes out the window, and it's the golden age of humanity. So anyway, that's my point of view, and even in the mundane and finite world of bedroom politics and court intrigue, I just think that as an event that's interesting, what's happening right now with this whole Benghazi thing, because also, and I know it's not your world, but I need to share it. But also, right now,
yes,
they theoretically have found the guy who led this raid on the American embassy, and they're going to go after him. And they've got the drones ready. Talk about technology. They've got the drones. They've publicly stated they're going to go after this guy now. See, now they're changing the narrative, and not only that, but they're going to take this guy out. And they're gonna take out somebody who probably knows quite a bit about what happened. Number one, and number two, he becomes the next Bin Laden. And now we have, hey, we got that guy. We're the administration that gets our men. Stuff like that. Anyway, I know that this on a large scale is mundane, but what we're seeing here is an unraveling of something that could very well get out of control. And for me personally, I'm actually enjoying watching this in my own way.
Well, whatever that is, and I'm not actually following it because I'm not a political person. I don't hold strong political views. I'm more of a universalist as far as I believe we're all human.
Yep.
And we need to past our differences and we need to see how we're more alike.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of, when you go out into space, you look back at the Earth, we're kind of on this planet, and we're in it together, and this is our planet, and we don't have another planet to go to. And we kind of got to stop fighting each other and start realizing that, it's either we learn to live together, or we don't get to be here. It's pretty simple. It's not a very complex equation. And I think that we need to start exploring space. If we're doing it secretly, that's one thing, but I think we need to start really doing it publicly, and I think we need to start demanding our politicians to start having missile defense against asteroids. And, we need to, Stephen Hawking is all over this topic.
Right.
We're playing, here we are, we have advanced technology, yet we don't really have a weapon system to protect us. Maybe there's a Black Ops version of this, but wouldn't it be a source of pride to say, we're ready for an incoming asteroid, and we're not going to take the same place the dinosaurs took.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to start investing our energies in advancing ourselves and evolving ourselves and putting it there rather than all this. It seems like everything that in our culture is just sort of looking at what somebody else is doing and talking about it, rather than thinking, how can we evolve and become super smart beings?
Well, I think,
on this planet.
I think that that's happening. I mean, I look at Larry Ellison, who owns Lanai, the island, right, of Lanai in Hawaii. Yeah. And Larry Ellison is going to take all of his money, and he's going to R&D there. But I'm not sure if his R&D has anything to do with you and me. Because I do think, Richard, that people have been doing this. And I think that they've got some pretty interesting toys. I just don't think that they're meant, at least from their perspective, for, the common man, quote unquote. I think it's a very elitist exercise, and I think they've been doing this since World War II and, post-Nazi Germany and all the technology that they have been working on since then. So I think, to your point, they are doing it. We're just not privy to it. That's all. And why? Because we're deemed not smart enough, or we're chattel, or we're cattle. To get to the top of the pyramid, you're playing with social Darwinism. And,
How would it not be a source of pride for a nation to say, we put our best scientists to work, and we've developed a platform in space so that we can now defend the Earth from any objects coming in, whether they be artificial or things from the Oort cloud or the asteroid belt.
Yeah.
It seems like the population, the public would love that kind of thing.
I think they would do it.
People love space.
Well, they do love space, but I think that they would do it only if it was going to suit some form of political gain or provide them with leverage. Well, they could do it, I'm sure. But I'm a lot more cynical. I don't believe in countries. I don't think countries exist. I think countries are a really nice label for corporations. They give us this notion that we are Americans and that there's nationalism and that there's pride, and really all it is kind of a nostalgic sloganeering. Meanwhile, the real money is doing stuff that is transnational. There's no borders. There's no economic borders. And the only reason why we have countries and flags is to continue to give us this distraction. That's how I see it. So this national pride, or I'm not sure that really exists. Look at SpaceX. That's where we are now. We're into the privatization of stuff, man. This has nothing to do.
Hold on. I think SpaceX is a good idea, though, because I want to hitch a ride to Mars, and apparently I'm not going to get to be an astronaut, so I do want private companies going to space.
All you have to do is become a Freemason. You become a Freemason, and your odds of becoming an astronaut they raise exponentially. Well, listen. I hope for your sake, because I think you are an explorer. I think you are there's a classification in the spiritual sort of nomenclature of people. There are certain people that are certain like types, and you fit the type of the nomad or the wanderer. I do too, but in my own different way. But I hope that someday you get your wish, and that you get to go out there and do that exploring.
We haven't talked about this. We haven't talked about music, but part of the reason that I make the type of music I do is it's a way for me to mentally travel.
Yeah.
And I try to conjure my own ideas of different places to go, different planets and things through sound, like a soundtrack. But more than anything, I'm ready to hitch a ride to the Orion, system, or I want to check out the Pleiades. I'm looking for that ride because, this universe is amazing. And, I think we need to start looking out instead of looking down. It's time to grow up as a species and, start expanding.
Hey, man, I'm with you. And if I could somehow, get a ride out of here with, with my loved ones and go to a place that was really cool and interesting, and
start over or integrate or blend, I'd be into it. I'm with you. You know, I'm ready for that. You know, if that were to occur, either that or you take all the assholes off the planet and leave the rest of us here so we can, you know, have a good time and, you know, see what we can do without the negative influence and the distortion.
For sure.
Either one of those, I'm good with. All right. Well, listen, Richard, it's getting late, and I know that you got to get up in the morning, do your thing. So I want to thank you. It's a great talk.
Absolutely.
And thanks for sharing the eyewitness account of this fireball. And we'll keep an eye on this because I don't think we've heard the last of it.
Hey, and thanks for talking to me. I love the show, and I love the fact that you just go follow any tangent and explore it. And you've got an open mind, and you know the world needs open minds.
Absolutely. All right, that's our friend Richard Mystical Sun. What's your website, Richard? It's mysticalsun.com. You can go there. You can listen to samples of his really wonderful ambient space electronic soundtracks. They're state-of-the-art stuff, right up there with people like Robert Rich and Steve Roach and a lot of the other great electronic composers of our time. So check it out. And they can find your stuff on iTunes too, right?
Yes, you got it.
All right, cool. Thanks again, Richard.
Take care.
All right, that was from last night. It was Richard Mystical Sun and our little tangent there about what's important. And is everything that we're watching just a theater of the absurd and a massive distraction? I would say mostly yes. Can we garner anything from it? I would say yes as well. And where's it all headed? Well, I think we're all about to find out. Sarson just sent me a quick email about another Herald camping prediction. End of the world this Sunday, the 21st. And camping's been wrong 2 times. Although, I will say that the one time that camping did make a crack at his prediction, there was a pretty major earthquake, I think, somewhere in the South Pacific. So it wasn't as if his prediction was devoid of disaster. Maybe he just needed to pray harder. I don't know. I'm not going to make fun of it, though, because we're all in this together. Yes, we are all in together, even with the Herald campings, you know, the Janet Napolitanos of the world. This is our spaceship, and we're all on it. And we have to figure out how to get through it, because there's no getting around it. That's for damn sure. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about before I sign off today, and I posted the link in the chat room, and it does have to do with Benghazi, and apparently, this is all coming out now, that Ambassador Stevens, not that it really matters on some level, but he was gay, and the administration sent a gay man into a Muslim country. And there was the reason why that this event took place, some of which might have been false flaggy, but also triggered by the fact that there was a gay man in a Muslim country, which is not cool. And well, after they killed him, they raped him. That's part of the story that I posted in the chat room. And again, we're in Saturn and Scorpio, so this is pretty intense stuff, pretty heavy stuff, and it just keeps coming out that we are now into the theater of degradation. The theater of degradation. That's where we are. The first Sandusky victim came out today and talked about what happened to him. He went public, just as Jerry Sandusky is clamoring for a new trial. I'm telling you, the gall of some people sometimes blows my mind. So more and more Saturnine energy wrapping itself around this Scorpionic coil very early in its inception, and more will come. Trust me on this. Okay, well, you've listened to the Friday edition of Free Association Radio, the Friday FARcast. I want to thank Richard Mystical Sun and James Burns for being on the show. And Monday will be my last show here in the Bay Area. I will do a quickie on Monday morning, a mashup, a final mashup from the East Bay, from the 510.
And then I will be in transit on Wednesday, and I will be in transit on Friday, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the next mashup will be coming to you live from the Lone Star State, which is where I will be headquartered for from here on out. So it's been a wonderful ride here in California for the last 7 years, and in fact, it's funny. It's amazing how we go through these cycles. It's been a 7-year cycle for me. I returned to Northern California from San Diego in 2005 and now 2012, and now I'm off on another 7-year cycle. And looking forward to exploring a new part of the world with a new group of people and travelers on the journey. Okay, I want to thank, as always, I don't give her enough thanks, Erica Maringer, who posts the shows to YouTube and does the occasional and odd bit of art for me. And if you have not found her in the chat room, you should, and you should check her out on YouTube. She has a YouTube channel. She's putting up new music. She's uber talented. Listen to her stuff. Very inspirational. I just got a link here, Tiger 5. I thought Muslims did not like gays. They don't. They don't. So it made no sense to send Chris Stevens into a Muslim country. They don't like gays. Why do they not like gays? Okay, dirty little secret. Are you ready? Here is the dirty little secret. Unfortunately, because in Muslim culture, you're supposed to marry a virgin, you don't have sex with women. So most adolescent sex happens between young boys, teenagers, and men in Muslim culture. So there's probably a great deal of rage and pathos and denial stored up in that world, which I don't even really want to get into. But think about it for a moment. Yeah, so there you go. All right. That's it. End of the show. Keep your eyes to the skies, fireballs. Great balls of fire. They are descending, careening and careening around this world and your consciousness. And they mean something. They absolutely mean something. What does it mean, though? That's for you to understand and find out. And until you do, use your head to discern and your heart to sift what's possible. Your head to discern what's real, your heart to sift what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Friday FARcast. And just to let you know, the piece that I play at the beginning of the show, I did that. It's just a clip. And the voice is the voice of Philip K. Dick. Somebody actually asked the YouTube channel about that. So it's me and it's Philip K. Dick. And it's Philip K. Dick recorded at a science fiction festival in Metz, France. All right. I'll see you on Monday. And here we go. Adios.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.